During a White House summit, President Trump is presented with a small, awkwardly wrapped gift by Elon Musk's 5-year-old son. Trump beams, anticipating a child's teasing gesture and nothing more. But later that evening, in solitude in the Oval Office, he opens it, and his world abruptly ceases to exist. The contents are not what anyone anticipated. It is basic, profound, and potent enough to leave the most confident man in America speechless. It was one of those days at the White House. Busy, boisterous, scrupulously scripted, and meticulously choreographed. Midway through his second presidential term, Donald Trump stood in the East Room, confidently conversing with dignitaries, cabinet members, and Elon Musk, whose mere presence drew cameras and murmurs. They conversed with ease, two titans in distinct arenas. Trump is a leader who is always prepared to take the lead, is confident and expansive. Musk, the visionary, is subdued. His eyes are perpetually darting with inquiry and thoughtful consideration. They were surrounded by the media, security personnel, and visitors. The staff hurried, murmured instructions drifted discreetly, and photographers meticulously captured every gesture, handshake, and mirth. However, in the midst of the meticulously orchestrated moments and the cacophony, there was an individual who appeared to be entirely out of place. X was standing in close proximity to his father, holding the edge of Elon's tailored jacket. Elon's 5-year-old son's eyes darted warily from person to person, evidently overcome by the grandeur of the room. Trump's demeanor was reflexively softened upon his initial observation of the timid child. He had consistently exhibited an unexpected tenderness toward children, finding their honesty to be invigorating and their innocence to be somehow soothing in the midst of the complexities of his world. Elon, recognizing his son's anxiety, placed a reassuring palm on his shoulder. He murmured softly, "It's all right. You are welcome to extend a greeting." X hesitated before nodding, his eyes widening as he gazed upward at the imposing figure that stood before him. Trump's expression was reassuring as he stooped slightly. "Greetings, young male. Your visit to the White House is a delightful experience." The child's small hand was securely gripping something behind his back as he nodded shakily. Elon smiled gently as he leaned forward slightly. Mr. President, Trump lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "X brought you something." Gifts from billionaires were not uncommon. They were typically extravagant or symbolic. However, a child? This was distinct, genuine in a manner that was unfamiliar to him. He regarded X with a kind expression and inquired, "Oh, really? Did you bring me something?" Stepping forward, X's cheekbones were flushed with redness. "I succeeded. Daddy rendered assistance. Is it possible for me to view it?" Trump, who is currently kneeling, inquired tenderly, disregarding the cameras and the inquisitive gazes of the officials in the vicinity. A small, clumsily wrapped parcel, tied together with a simple thread, was thrust out by X, his eyes wide with apprehensive excitement. His diminutive hands trembled slightly. "It is for you," he whispered gently, his voice scarcely perceptible amidst the murmurs of the room. The sincere gesture was authentically touching to Trump, who took the box with care. He expressed his gratitude to the young man with warmth. "I will access it at a later time." "No problem." The child's eyes were still fixated on the floor, and they nodded enthusiastically. Trump stood gingerly, teasing the boy's hair. Elon acknowledged Trump's sincere affection for his son with a fleeting smile and a nod of gratitude. Elon acknowledged gently, "He has been exceedingly enthusiastic about this occasion." Trump chuckled as he held the tiny parcel up in a playful manner. "I am grateful for the idea. It will be cherished by me." He was once again drawn into discussions, briefings, and conversations regarding Mars colonization, electric vehicle infrastructure, and innovation as the day progressed. However, Trump was perpetually cognizant of the small package that was perfectly slipped into the inner pocket of his suit jacket, despite the constant flow of power and influence that surrounded him. Trump ultimately retired to the presidential residence later that evening. The room was silent, with a single lamp that cast balmy shadows across his desk, lighting it dimly. The staff had long since dispersed, and the burden of the day was finally being lifted from his shoulders. He sighed profoundly and unfastened his tie as he sank heavily into his chair. He then recalled the small, clumsily wrapped gift that X had given him. His lips were lightly brushed with a smile. He meticulously set the box onto his polished desk by reaching into his jacket pocket. He gazed at it with curiosity for a brief period. He experienced an unusual sense of uncertainty. Gifts were prevalent. He had acquired thousands of valuable antiquities, political memorabilia, and priceless artifacts. Nevertheless, this diminutive, handcrafted product possessed an uncommon gravitas, an innocent sincerity that caused him to pause. He gingerly tugged at the simple string, experiencing a peculiar, unfamiliar sensation of anticipation. The wrapping paper effortlessly came off, revealing a straightforward timber frame that was slightly scratched. It contained an antiquated, indistinct photograph of Earth that had been captured from space. The image was evidently reproduced from an outdated NASA archive. The worn edges and the smudges from a child's tiny fingertips tenderly gripping the photo during the framing were visible to him. Trump's eyebrows slightly furrowed. He had not anticipated it in the slightest. It was straightforward, unassuming, and yet peculiarly poignant. A small note, written in Elon's unmistakable penmanship, was affixed beneath the photo, but it was evidently dictated by the child. Daddy asserts that we are insignificant specks who believe we are enormous. Please remember to gaze upward. The air surrounding Trump abruptly became congested, causing Trump to freeze. He had instinctively prepared a fast quip that was formulating on his lips. I am the largest dot. However, the words ceased to be spoken as he drew air, remaining mute in the room. Rather, he was enveloped in solitude. Suddenly cognizant of the immensity it symbolized, he gazed at the diminutive, unassuming image of Earth. He sat, respiration trapped in his chest, as an unfamiliar wave of humility rushed through him, as if this simple photograph had made an unexpected shift in him. He had never genuinely considered the concept of being small or inconsequential. He was not like this. His life was structured around the concept of being greater than existence, political power, media domination, and skyscrapers. However, here, one is confronted with the immense expanse that envelops a diminutive blue planet. Suddenly, everything appeared to be extremely fragile and diminutive. He extended his hand gradually, his fingertips tracing the contours of clouds, oceans, and continents. Everything he had built, everything he had fought for, all of his aspirations, ambitions, and lives were down there, just a minuscule dot suspended in an infinite darkness. It was profound, silently profound, humbling, and horrifying. The boy's words reverberated tenderly in his mind once more. Small circles. Please remember to gaze upward. Trump's pulse was unusually constricted as he reclined in his chair. He had a rare opportunity to completely accept the silence that enveloped him. He was no longer able to protect himself from the overwhelming simplicity of this newfound perspective with words or bravado. Insignificance. He momentarily recalled disregarding Elon's previous statements regarding human insignificance in the universe and his humility. He dismissed it with a chuckle, content in his accustomed carapace of authority. However, the words now emitted a distinct, authentic, and profound sensation. Donald Trump, renowned for his towering presence and brash confidence, finally felt the silent stirrings of something he had neglected for decades in the serenity of the Oval Office, while holding the unassuming gift in his hands. It was a peculiar sensation, characterized by humility and a receptivity to the universe, as it truly was. An immense, enigmatic entity that surpasses his own size. The armor experienced a minor fracture. The confidence diminished. Slowly, he exhaled, meticulously positioning the photograph in a conspicuous location on his desk, accessible on a daily basis. Perhaps the room was now warmer, smaller, and yet immeasurably larger, all at the same time. Trump was unaware of the significance of this emotion or the precise manner in which it would influence him. However, the gift had instilled in him a calm contrition that he was aware would gradually develop, silently, and transform him in ways that he could not yet fully comprehend. That evening, he made his final calls and sat in silence, his gaze constantly drawn to the small, framed photograph of Earth. The words of a timid, wise child lingered in his mind, as if they were small specks who believed they were substantial. For the first time, Trump permitted himself to gaze upward in the calm depths of his private reflection. The diminutive photograph, enclosed in its simple wooden frame, remained in the exact same location on the corner of Donald Trump's Oval Office desk. he still found his eyes drawn to it on a regular basis, as if they were being drawn by an invisible force, despite the passage of days. The pace of activity in his vicinity had not diminished. In fact, the demands had become increasingly strident. The relentless flow of meetings, briefings, and speeches was a never-ending cascade of power and responsibility. Nevertheless, the tranquil image from Elon Musk's son appeared to be unusually potent in the midst of this tumult. It was distinct from all other objects. A constant reminder of the immensity he had been neglecting for decades, the gentle yet confronting reminder was a constant. One morning, Trump was in his office, perusing a substantial stack of briefing documents, legislative proposals, intelligence reports, and policy outlines. He was acclimated to rapidly skimming, attempting to assimilate only the necessary information to make acute decisions. However, his attention was diverted today, and for the first time, he observed the silence of the Oval Office, peaceful rather than oppressive. Again, his gaze was drawn to the photograph. The morning sun was attracted to the indistinct traces that X had left on its edges. Gentle illumination illuminated minute specks. The golden radiance revealed the innocent touch of a child. Trump's fingertips meticulously traced the edge. He endeavored to remember the most recent instance in which he had been sincerely moved by a seemingly innocuous act. It required an excessively lengthy duration. He was abruptly roused from his contemplation by a delicate tap. Barron entered the room, and he peered up, hesitantly holding a large textbook. Trump gently greeted, appreciating the distraction. "Is it not necessary for you to be in class? Today, teachings are conducted online." Barron approached cautiously, shrugging. "Are you currently preoccupied?" A faint smile emanated from Trump. "I am never too occupied. Please take a seat." Barron's attention was immediately drawn to the photograph. He meticulously examined it after picking it up, intrigued. "What is this? Is it a gift?" Almost reluctantly, Trump provided an explanation that was sluggish to deliver. From the offspring of Elon Musk X, Barron scrutinized it with great care before shifting his focus to his father, his brow slightly furrowing. "Why, Earth?" Trump beamed, experiencing an unusual sense of vulnerability. "Its purpose is to serve as a reminder that I am merely a miniature dot." Barron raised an eyebrow, evidently amused by the concept. "You are not precisely the type of individual who I would describe as a small dot." Trump's laughter was sincere. "No, that is precisely the reason he gave it to me, I presume." Barron placed the frame down, contemplating it in depth. Following an extended period of silence, he discreetly expressed, "Perhaps it is desirable." Surprised, Trump gazed at his son. "What are your thoughts?" "Yes," Barron replied with sincerity. "You consistently emphasize the significance of every detail. It must be a source of exhaustion. It is possible that believing oneself to be lesser simplifies the situation." The remarks of his son were taken in by Trump, who reclined back. The sincerity in Barron's intonation resonated with Trump in a manner that was unexpected, as he rarely spoke so candidly. Trump acknowledged, "I never considered it in that manner." Barron faintly smiled. "I have always believed that feeling large was the key to navigating life." "Yes, but it may also be the reason for the complexity of the situation." Trump took a moment to contemplate this realization in depth. It was peculiarly comforting to hear such truth from his own son. "When did you acquire such a high level of wisdom?" Barron meekly shrugged. "Most likely from one's mother." A gentle snicker emanated from Trump. For a brief period, they maintained a state of tranquility. Trump eventually broke the silence, as the typical pressures of office, media scrutiny, and expectations silently dissipated, replaced by something genuine, warmer, and profoundly human. "I am delighted that you have visited. Please remind me to express my gratitude to your mother for the manner in which she raised you." Barron smiled, although he slightly rolled his eyes. "I will execute that action." Trump once again captivated Barron's attention as he prepared to depart. Trump said quietly, "Hey, don't stop reminding me to think smaller. I think I might need it more than I realized." Barron nodded with graveness. "Agreed." Later that afternoon, Trump was slated to meet with Elon again in private without the customary cacophony of cameras and reporters. Trump cordially welcomed Elon as he entered the Oval Office, but he soon observed that Elon's gaze was drawn to the photograph. Elon expressed his genuine astonishment at the fact that you had actually retained it, remarking that his ex would be pleased to know. Trump laughed gently, feeling slightly self-conscious. Inform him that it is currently my preferred item on this workstation. Elon sat in the chair across from Trump and beamed cordially. I did not anticipate that you would be the sort to take it so seriously. Trump's irises became more empathetic. I did not either. The distant murmur of the building around them punctuated a comfortable pause between them. Elon tenderly interrupted the silence. You know, he truly meant it. Sometimes, children have a unique ability to observe things that we fail to notice. I believe that X comprehends life more profoundly at the age of 5 than the majority of us will ever do. Trump nodded attentively, selecting his words with care. I have lived my entire existence under the impression that I comprehended everything. Influence, triumph, and victory. I have constructed structures and established reputations. I never once entertained the possibility that it might be advantageous to experience feelings of inferiority. Elon listened calmly and attentively, contemplating Trump's statements. It is peculiar, is it not? We pursue significance, but all we truly discover is an increased sense of obligation to be significant. Trump breathed profoundly, experiencing an unexpected sense of comprehension. Last time, I disregarded your discourse regarding constellations and insignificance. I initially believed it to be philosophical foolishness. However, I believe I have gained a better understanding of it, at least to a certain extent. Elon's voice was soothing as he leaned forward. It is a profoundly humbling experience to realize that all that you have accomplished is merely a mere speck in an infinite universe. Trump's focus was remote as he nodded slowly. And in some way, that makes everything appear more significant and meaningful. Elon beamed with a knowing expression. Exactly. The irony of insignificance. Trump returned the smile, sensing a calm bond forming. This bond was not based on power, wealth, or influence, but on something gentler and more genuine. Would you be so kind as to express my gratitude to X? Eventually, Trump issued a tepid response. Inform him that he provided me with an item that I was unaware I required. Warmly, Elon nodded. I will inform him tonight. Trump stood solemnly by the window, gazing out at the south lawn as Elon departed. He reflected on the number of presidents who had stood in the same position as he did. These individuals had the power to influence nations, histories, and entire periods, yet they were insignificant in the grand scheme of things. He had never before allowed himself to fully contemplate this perspective. A change occurred within him. Not in an overly dramatic or boisterous manner. He felt an unusual sense of lightness, as if he were laying down a weighty object that he had forgotten he was carrying. It was a subtle fissure in the armor that he had worn so comfortably his entire life. As darkness descended, Trump resumed his seat at his desk. The small photograph, silent and unassuming, appeared to radiate a gentle radiance in the soft lamplight. He meticulously raised the frame, examining the smudged borders. In a subdued voice, he murmured to himself, "Fingerprints. Tiny yet profound. Tiny dots." Subsequently, he meticulously repositioned the photograph in its original position, experiencing a slight sense of warmth in his bosom and a silent sense of gratitude that he was unable to articulate. He paused for a final extended moment before departing for the evening, gazing at the diminutive representation of Earth. He comprehended something fundamental during that tranquil moment. It is possible that his greatest strength was not his size, but rather his realization that he never truly required it. The Oval Office was plunged into a soothing darkness as he turned off the illumination. He would assume the presidency once more tomorrow. Pressures, decisions, and headlines await. However, tonight he was merely a minuscule dot, appreciative of the child who had served as a reminder of the immense power that humility could possess. The photograph remained in its designated location as the days progressed into weeks. A modest, indistinct image of Earth, unaffected by the grander surroundings. Donald Trump maintained numerous possessions in his existence, emblems of authority, costly artifacts, and tokens of victory. However, none had ever been as quietly impactful, as curiously significant as this modest gift from Elon Musk's young son. Staff members observed the photograph, but they never inquired. They acquired the ability to sense their supervisor with precision. A single word or mood has the potential to alter entire narratives. However, a subtle change had occurred recently. The president had begun to speak with a slightly lower volume and to pause more frequently. The reason for this was unknown, but it was evident in the manner in which he conducted briefings, interacted with his aides, and listened during meetings. One afternoon, the president was confronted by his Secretary of Defense during a tense cabinet meeting, who passionately advocated for the expansion of the military presence in a region that was already at the brink of collapse. Trump maintained an uncommonly reflective stillness as he listened. In the midst of the impassioned debate, advisors anticipating the president's decisive intervention were greeted with an unexpected pause. Ultimately, Trump spoke with a gentle demeanor, lacking his typical assertiveness. We should postpone. It is possible that fortitude is not always derived from the demonstration of power. Restraint can occasionally convey more than action. The cabinet members exchanged bewildered expressions. There was an authority in his subdued tone that appeared to be more potent than his fiercest declarations, and the president rarely hesitated or favored subtlety over boldness. Nevertheless, no one questioned him further. Trump returned to the Oval Office alone, his mind weighed down by concerns after the meeting adjourned. He leaned back against the door as he released a breath, closing it. Once more, his eyes were attracted to the photograph almost instinctively. He took a step forward and gingerly lifted it. The indistinct smudges are traced by the fingertip. The child's innocent wisdom had become his compass, as evidenced by the small imprints that were left behind. He quietly murmured, "Dots who believe we are very large." A gentle impact caused his reflection to shatter. His assistant discreetly entered, and he turned. "Mr. President, you have scheduled visitors, pupils from a nearby school, weeks in advance." Trump softly exhaled and nodded. "Send them in." A group of elementary pupils entered the Oval Office with caution, their eyes open and their mouths slightly gaping. The teacher, who was evidently anxious, directed the students forward while murmuring gentle instructions. Trump observed the youthful, unguarded features in silence, experiencing an unexpected warmth. He inquired tenderly, "Does anyone have any questions?" just after briefly introducing himself. An apprehensive young girl tentatively extended her hand. "Do you ever experience fear?" The room was abruptly and unexpectedly silenced. Trump deliberated for a moment, contemplating his response. Ultimately, he lowered his head slightly and gazed directly into her eyes. Indeed, he replied with a low voice. The girl appeared perplexed, as I am occasionally. "Even presidents are susceptible to anxiety." A warm expression emanated from Trump. "Particularly presidents. It is not detrimental to experience fear. It implies that you are aware that certain things are larger than yourself, and this is significant." She nodded in contemplation, content with his response. Another youngster inquired about the small frame on the desk. "What is that?" Trump meticulously removed it, demonstrating it to them. "This was presented to me by a lad who is not significantly older than you. It serves as a reminder that we are all insignificant in a vast universe." What is the significance of this? The youngster exerted pressure. Trump's smirk was peculiarly emotional. This is due to the fact that acknowledging our diminutive size facilitates our practice of compassion. It serves as a reminder that we are perpetually dependent on others, regardless of our perceived size. I nearly overlooked that. The children remained silent, evidently moved by his candor. Trump gingerly returned the photograph to his desk as they exited the Oval Office, their innocent voices reverberating quietly in the corridors. The room, which was now vacant, appeared to be both larger and smaller than it had been previously. Later that evening, Trump and Melania dined discreetly, a practice they rarely had the opportunity to engage in. His pensive silence was immediately apparent to her. She made a subtle observation that you have been acting differently lately. He lifted his head from his plate, reflecting on his thoughts. In what way is this different? Perhaps more subdued, more tranquil? There was a faint guffaw from him. Is this a negative occurrence? She responded tenderly, "No." He slowly nodded, then reached into his jacket and extracted a folded piece of paper. He delicately unfolded X's note and slipped it across the table. Melania read it slowly, a slight smile edging her lips. She murmured softly, her eyes gentle and her lips were dotted with tiny dots. Trump leaned forward. You know, I've spent my entire life feeling significant and important, as if that was the most important thing. She meticulously observed him. Now he exhaled profoundly. I am beginning to suspect that modest may actually be more substantial. Quieter may be more audible. Humility may be more potent than victory. Melania tenderly smiled, reaching across the table to gingerly squeeze his hand. It is possible that you required a child to serve as a reminder. In response, Trump beamed, his face filled with a genuine sense of affection. It appears that I did. The subtle ripples of his newfound contrition began to spread as the weeks passed. In a confidential memo, White House personnel were advised to prioritize compassion in their interactions. It is not a command, but rather a quietly expressed request. He began accepting invitations to small local events, visiting locations he would typically neglect, such as elementary schools, community centers, and quiet neighborhood churches, discreetly and without media coverage. He spent time simply listening. While strolling leisurely through Arlington National Cemetery with Barron one evening, Trump took a moment to contemplate the boundless aisles of serene headstones. "Have you ever considered this?" Softly, Trump inquired. "Regarding what?" Barron responded with a faint sense of bewilderment. "Regarding the significance of each of these names and lives. Each and every one?" The words of his father were taken in by Barron, who nodded attentively. It is a realization that the large issues are not always as they appear. Trump smiled faintly and placed a delicate hand on his son's shoulder. Exactly. The gravitas of the moment lingered comfortably between them as they walked in silence. Elon Musk returned to the area 1 month later, this time accompanied by the X. Trump extended a cordial welcome to them, promptly kneeling to X's eye level. Trump informed him with sincerity that he had retained your gift. "It is my preferred option." X's irises widened in astonishment. "Honestly?" "Indeed." Trump tenderly smiled as he nodded. "I was reminded of a thing that I needed to remember by you." The boy was proud and flashed a smirk, but he was unsure of the precise reason. Later, as they strolled together, Trump discreetly confessed to Elon, "Something was altered by your son. I was not anticipating it, but I am appreciative." Elon's lips were adorned with a delicate smile as he slowly nodded. Occasionally, the most compelling truths are articulated by the most diminutive voices. Trump paused in contemplation, peering out at the waning sunlight. "I dedicated my entire existence to the pursuit of power. Perhaps I have come to the realization that genuine power is derived from an understanding of our diminutiveness." Elon's expression was gentle. "This increases your size to an unprecedented extent." Trump shook his head, appearing to be sincerely contrite. "Maybe it just makes me human again." Trump stood alone that evening, gazing once more at the small photograph as the Oval Office fell silent. It had not yet been altered. Everything about the room, about himself, and about his comprehension of the world around him had been significantly altered by it. He retrieved a pen and meticulously composed a note that he intended to present to Barron at a later date. It is crucial to not conflate size with significance. Everything can be altered by the slightest dot. He tenderly folded it, placed it in an envelope, and stowed it into a drawer, silently preparing to pass on a legacy that was not built on towers or titles, but on humility and humanity. Donald Trump experienced a wholly novel sensation for the first time in decades. Harmony, and it was all because a child had given him a gift that served as a reminder of his own insignificance. He stood quietly, eyes closed, breathing slowly, and felt himself quietly transformed. This transformation was not a result of speeches, elections, or headlines, but rather from the simple wisdom of recognizing himself as a small dot, finally able to gaze up and be humbled by the infinite. The ambiance surrounding the White House underwent a subtle yet distinct transformation in the weeks that followed. It was not a public policy pivot or a grand declaration. It resonated delicately through the tiny gestures and quieter conversations of Donald Trump himself, as it was quieter and more personal. Despite their training to anticipate elaborate gestures and headline-grabbing announcements, his aides and staff were unable to acclimate to the unfamiliar. Quiet sincerity, unanticipated humility, and delicate humanity. They observed the president as he initiated unscheduled informal meetings with community leaders, veterans, and faith groups, perplexed but intrigued. The discussions were conducted in private, without the presence of cameras or press coverage, and were conducted in a calm and sincere manner. Trump visited the children's ward of Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in a discreet manner one morning. He was not accompanied by any photographers. Press statements were not issued by any staff members. He sat beside hospital beds, attentively listened to the stories of parents, and discreetly comforted those whose struggles he had previously rarely considered. He discovered genuine purpose for the first time in years, not in the sense of dominance or control, but rather in the authentic human connection. Later that afternoon, in the Oval Office, Trump sat alone at his desk, the calm, indistinct photograph of Earth never far from his eyes. He reflected on the day's conversations, profoundly contemplating the strength and resilience he had encountered. These qualities were not boisterous and boastful, but rather quiet and humble, and were delicately interwoven through the words of each individual. His contemplation was abruptly interrupted by a gentle knock. He raised his head to observe his chief of staff enter with caution. The aide began cautiously, evidently uncertain about how to approach the subject, Mr. President. Some employees have been inquiring as to whether there is a strategic rationale behind the recent silent visits you have conducted. The subject was meticulously examined by Trump. Strategy? He gently shook his head. No, it is simply acknowledging that the most insignificant details can sometimes have the greatest impact. It is not always necessary for it to be political. The assistant nodded in contemplation. Individuals observe. They are grateful. A faint smile emanated from Trump. Inform them that I share your sentiment. The assistant hesitated briefly before discreetly acknowledging the situation. Some of us are inquisitive. What is the reason for the change? Trump's irises appeared to soften as he peered back at the photograph. A gift was presented to me by a young child. I was unaware of the extent to which I required it until I acquired it. The aide gazed at the photograph, perhaps for the first time, observing its understated elegance. From the offspring of Elon Musk. Indeed. Softly, Trump nodded. He struck me with the realization that we are all incredibly diminutive. The assistant nodded slowly, silently comprehending, and passed between them. It is appropriate for you, gentlemen. A rare, sincerely humble smile was presented by Trump. I am grateful. Trump's altered perspective had an impact on even his closest relationships as the days turned into weeks. He was unexpectedly situated across from Ivanka and Jared in the private residence one evening. His daughter had typically engaged in discussions regarding political strategy, business advice, or calculated decisions. However, Trump spoke softly tonight, his voice unusually reflective. Ivanka, do you recall the summer you were 8 years old? Softly, he inquired. She appeared bewildered, her eyes softening with a sense of distant nostalgia. We engaged in sailing. I was taken out on the yacht by you for the two of us. He silently assent. You made a statement that I will never forget. You inquired as to whether I had ever observed the constellations. I informed you that the constellations were irrelevant. They failed to generate revenue. Ivanka chuckled softly, albeit with a hint of melancholy. That sounds like you from that time. Trump appeared to be genuinely apologetic. I neglected to attend to an essential matter that evening. You observed it prior to me. The significance of stars is significant, perhaps more than structures and agreements could ever accomplish. Ivanka gingerly reached across the table and grasped his hand. Perhaps I was attempting to impart a sense of awe to you, while you instilled in me ambition. He gingerly nodded, his voice intensifying with emotion. It took me decades to finally hear you. Jared observed the event in silence, comprehending its importance and feeling appreciative of the opportunity to observe it. Trump momentarily encountered Jared's gaze, acknowledging the discreet assistance he had consistently rendered. A few days later, Trump discreetly contacted Elon, inviting him and his ex-partner to return to the White House. The invitation was not intended to engage in political spectacle, but rather to spend quality time together in private. Upon their arrival, Trump personally greeted X, kneeling once more to the child's level and beaming cordially. Continue to seek upward mobility? The X inquired with a smirk, his eyes wide and optimistic. Trump nodded sincerely and smiled gently. I am grateful for your assistance on a daily basis. Subsequently, as we strolled through the rose garden, Elon discreetly acknowledged, "I was under the impression that the photograph would not have a significant effect on you." A subtle snigger emanated from Trump. "I do not, but occasionally slight sounds can jolt you awake." Elon beamed with a knowing grin, gazing silently at his son as he ran ahead. "This is peculiar. We pursue success and accomplishments only to discover that we were more content as children who did not require much." Trump took a moment to reflect. "Perhaps that is the final image I am able to perceive. The White House, the prestige and the world's attention, all of this. I believed that this was a triumph. However, genuine prosperity is more subdued. It is more modest. Perhaps it is as straightforward as acknowledging that we are all minuscule specks." Elon gingerly nodded. "I am also acquiring this knowledge." Barron joined X in playing calmly in the garden as they conversed. In the Oval Office that evening, Trump was alone, the day's conversations gently weighing on his mind. The image of two boys, utterly unaware of power or position, reminded him of something essential, the innocence he had long lost but now profoundly appreciated. He meticulously repositioned the photograph, contemplating the profound influence of its straightforward message on his recent decisions. He quietly grasped for a pen and began composing a private letter that was not addressed to world leaders or dignitaries, but rather to Elon's young son. "Dear X," he wrote in a gentle voice, "I have lived my entire existence under the impression that I was greater than life. You served as a reminder that I was in error. I appreciate your assistance in regaining my ability to see plainly. Continue to maintain an upward gaze." He meticulously folded the letter, packed it in an envelope, and placed it next to the photograph, vowing to personally deliver it when the time was appropriate. In the weeks that followed, Trump's discreet private changes silently inspired changes in those around him. His staff began to emulate his subdued, compassionate leadership style as they recognized his genuine sincerity. Throughout the West Wing, conversations became more personal, reflective, and gentler. Although it was never overtly discussed, it was widely recognized that something significant was occurring. A place that was frequently consumed by power and politics had quietly reinvigorated something profoundly human. Trump silently passed a janitor who was tidying the hallways as he exited the office late one evening. Despite passing by him on numerous occasions, he had never truly observed the elderly man. He abruptly halted and turned his attention to the individual. "I apologize," he stated succinctly. The custodian appeared astonished. "I apologize, Mr. President." Trump's expression was gentle. "I have passed you on numerous occasions without ever requesting your name." The fellow was taken aback and responded with a hesitant smile. "William, Father." Trump extended a welcoming hand. "William, I am grateful. Your daily efforts are greatly appreciated." William shook his hand slowly, evidently affected. "It is greatly appreciated, Mr. President." Trump nodded and proceeded calmly on his journey, feeling more human than presidential, and acknowledging that it was potentially the most significant accomplishment he had ever accomplished. Trump sat silently in the residence that evening, eyes closed, inhaling deeply, allowing gratitude to fill the spaces he had spent decades safeguarding with bravado and ego. The quiet, humble photo remained ever present in his consciousness. A vast universe, a minuscule dot, and a gentle reminder of his modest but profoundly significant location within it. He experienced tranquility, a sensation that he had pursued for an extended period of time, but had only occasionally discovered. For once, Donald Trump refrained from attempting to attain global dominance. As an alternative, he ultimately recognized his true position within it. Quietly humbled and profoundly appreciative, he accepted the smallness that he had long mischaracterized. Trump murmured softly, "Thank you, X," in the immense stillness of the White House residence beneath the quiet gaze of the photograph. The peaceful transformation within Donald Trump remained private for months. His altered demeanor had a subtle impact on the White House, his relationships, and most importantly, himself. Without the need for dramatic announcements, elaborate ceremonies, or meticulously choreographed press conferences. The modest photograph of Elon Musk's son was present on his desk each morning. Each evening, prior to retiring, Trump would gaze at it, discreetly reminding himself of the one profound truth that he had disregarded for decades. He was a mere dot, in an immense universe. Initially unsettling, that thought had evolved into an oddly comforting sensation, directing him toward a more pensive and compassionate lifestyle. The subtle adjustments had not gone unnoticed. Aides privately discussed the president's unanticipated humility, his genuine inquiry about ordinary people, and his softer demeanor. They felt more at ease around him, able to communicate more candidly without fear of severe judgment. The atmosphere of the White House had gradually changed from one of tension and conflict to one that was more authentic and human. On a late autumn morning, Trump was alone in the Oval Office, calmly writing at his desk. He took a moment to reflect, once more gazing at the photograph. However, the small and defective image of Earth, which was grainy, still profoundly affected him. Barron discreetly entered, interrupting his contemplation. Preoccupied? Barron inquired gently, but with apprehension at the entrance. A warm expression emanated from Trump. "I'm never too occupied. Please enter." The familiar photograph immediately captivated the Baron, who sat across from him. "You continue to examine it on a daily basis." Trump quietly nodded. "Each and every day." "Is its significance still the same?" Trump reclined back in contemplation. "It is becoming increasingly significant on a daily basis. It serves as a reminder that I am no longer required to demonstrate anything to anyone. I simply must be authentic." Barron contemplated this matter, meticulously observing his father. "Do you anticipate that you will disclose this information to the public at some point?" Trump gently shook his head. "No, I do not believe so. The potency of certain objects is diminished when they are attempted to be explicated. This is one of them." Barron nodded, comprehending the subdued gravity of the situation. "Then why did you inform me?" Trump's expression was gentle. "Because one day you will be confronted with the same decision as I was, between humility and authority. I would like you to be aware that there is more power in calm sincerity than in all the acclaim in the world." The words of his father were profoundly absorbed by Barron, who felt their sincerity discreetly resonate within him. "I will bear that in mind." Trump discreetly reached into a drawer and extracted the letter he had composed months prior, which was still sealed and addressed to Musk. He delivered it to Barron with meticulous attention. "Would you be able to ensure that X receives this at some point?" Trump inquired mildly. "I am of the opinion that no one else could convey it as effectively." The envelope was accepted by Barron, who nodded in seriousness. "I will ensure its security." "I am confident that you will." Trump said gently, "because you are evolving into the type of man who comprehends the significance of trivial matters." Trump's presidency was nearing its conclusion as the year concluded. His second term was virtually completed. The media was inundated with plans and rumors. He was the subject of legacy discussions, elaborate retrospectives, and predictions regarding his legacy. Trump listened silently, aware that the world could only evaluate success based on spectacle and commotion. However, his true legacy was evident to him, consisting of humility, quietness, and unseen acts of compassion. He did not see the necessity of announcing it. He experienced a sense of liberation from the perpetual pursuit of recognition and approbation for the first time. The final days in the office arrived in a flash. Files, personal items, and artifacts were meticulously packed by the staff in anticipation of the ceremonial transition. Trump remained seated at his desk, his photograph securely in position, as the Oval Office gradually emptying. Looking up, he observed Elon Musk and X entering gingerly as he heard footfall. He rose to greet them, smiling cordially. Elon expressed his admiration with a discreet bow. Sheely X waved his hand. "You retained it." Elon delicately observed the photograph, gesturing toward it. Trump nodded earnestly. "The amount of change that occurred on a daily basis exceeded my expectations." Elon extended a welcoming smile and gently touched his son's shoulder. "The most significant impact can be achieved by the smallest of details." Trump again crouched to the boy's level, gazing down at X. "You presented me with an exceptional gift, and one that is seldom received by even the most distinguished presidents." X appeared intrigued. "What is that? Insight?" Trump responded with a gentle tone. "I am grateful." X grinned with a smirk. He was pleased, but he was unaware of the true significance of his gesture. Trump gingerly handed X a small parcel that he had retrieved from his drawer. "What is it?" X inquired, his pupils widening. "It's nothing substantial," Trump replied with a smile. "However, it holds significant value for me, much like your gift. Please ensure its safety." A solemn acknowledgement was given by ex-Elon, observed in silence. Trump stood silently in the fading light, while alone in the nearly vacant Oval Office later that evening, moved by the gentle sincerity. He was aware that he would likely never sit at this desk again, and he would never again experience the full weight of responsibility it represented. However, for the first time, this realization did not disturb him. Conversely, he experienced tranquility. He felt profoundly appreciative of the calm humility that he had acquired. He meticulously removed the photograph from the desk for the final time, holding it close and experiencing the diminutiveness of Earth, his own insignificant position within the expansive cosmos. The Baron was observed standing calmly in the doorway, his gaze gentle and pensive, as he slowly turned. "Are you prepared to depart?" Baron inquired in a low voice. Trump smiled and nodded. "Indeed, I believe I have achieved this." They strode in tandem, abandoning public expectations, prestige, and authority. The sky was adorned with soft colors, a calm and beautiful sight as the winter sun faded,